In this video, I'm going to show you one of the most important things that you can do as a music producer and ultimately save countless hours of time over your production career. And what I'm talking about is creating a custom template for yourself. For years, I would just use the default blank template inside FL Studio, and as a result, I would have to load the same plugins over and over and over again every time I started a new project. And I know a lot of producers who still produce this way. For a while now, I've been using a custom template which is somewhat updated. It has some coloring and some labeling, and I've done just a little bit of the basic work in order to kind of help save a little bit of time. I also have some plugins which I always load up on my master chain, and so this helps me save a little bit of time with that as well. But what we're going to be doing in today's video is I'm actually going to be making a new template for myself, and I'm going to go into detail about all the possible things that you can add into your template which can potentially save you a ton of time. Now I'm going to be making this template as I create this tutorial, so I will leave a link in the description to a free download of this finished template. So if you want to download that, feel free. However, I strongly recommend that you actually watch this entire video and don't just download the template and leave, because I guarantee you my workflow is different than your workflow. There's so many different types and styles of workflows inside FL Studio, and the main takeaway that I want you to get from this video are all the nuances and little things that you can do to potentially save time within your workflow. So you may or may not want to add all the little things that I'm ultimately going to add inside my template. You may want to, but either way, with all that being said, let's get straight into the video. So currently the way that I have my template set up is so that when I add things, I can just right click here. I can go to auto name clips. It will auto name that. And then inside the channel rack, it will also auto name everything. So I don't actually currently have anything in the channel rack yet. And then I can go in here to the channel settings and I can route to the free mixer track. You can also just hit Control-L and it will route it to the free mixer track. And then everything will be colored and labeled the same as it is basically all the way across the board. Now, one of the problems with doing it this way is MIDI does not work. Any MIDI instruments, it will not auto name in the correct way where it actually colors and does everything. So that's kind of a little bit of a problem. And the second thing to keep in mind is that you can actually link things individually to tracks just with this button here. So by default, our kick is set to this, but I can link it to 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever insert I want. So if I create a template in a way where I have my kick, hi-hats, basically everything linked and color-coded already within the mixer to the playlist, then I can just go into my channel rack and I can just link it like this. And so that ultimately will save quite a bit of time in the long run. So this is something that I'm actually tweaking with my workflow, which you may want to consider while creating your custom template as well. So let's actually get in here and start making this template. All right, so far I've labeled and color-coded everything in the playlist that I think I might use. Obviously, there's probably going to be circumstances where I don't use certain tracks or I need other tracks to add, in which case it's simple to just rename audio, whatever. We'll just name this add, and then I can hit shift and I can use the scroll wheel to put this wherever I need it to go. Now, I have not included icons on this. I just don't really feel the need to. However, if you want to get more organized, you can right click right here, go to rename color and icon, and then we can go to this, scroll down, and you can choose whichever icon you want. Now inside the mixer, I have everything color coded the same as I do on the playlist. So right now I have a sidechain that I'm working on, which is ultimately going to be a send channel, and I'm going to load up a couple different plugins. So for example, one of the plugins I'm going to load up is Gross Beat, and I'm going to go ahead and go into presets, go to momentary, and we'll go to sidechain here. I'm going to use just this preset and just leave the default settings. And then I'm going to mute that. And then I'm going to go down here and I'm going to do a fruity balance, and I'll have the fruity balance on there as well. So these are the two simple ways that I use sidechaining, and depending on what genre I'm producing, if I'm doing 4 to the floor music, I can just unmute the gross beat and we'll have a 4 to the floor sidechain effect going on, and I can just route any of my instruments to the sidechain very easily. If I am not doing 4 to the floor music, if I'm doing hip hop or future bass, something other than 4 to the floor, I can use my fruity balance and I can create an automation clip this way. If you don't know how I usually do sidechain, I'll leave a link in the description and somewhere on the screen right now if you want to check out how I do sidechaining with the fruity balance. But anyway, this is going to save me a ton of time, because now instead of having to sidechain everything individually that I want to, I can just very quickly route it to the sidechain channel, and I only have to basically create my sidechain once and then I'm done. Now I want to get this a little bit more organized. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this sidechain and I'm going to right click it, and I'm going to go to dock to, and I'm going to dock to the right. Since I do have it on channel 1, it's a little weird. So what I can do here, let me actually go back. I'm going to put this on a farther channel. I'm going to do this probably on like channel 50 or something, just so I have plenty of other channels to work with though I need to. So now starting on channel 50, we have our sidechain, and I can route everything directly to that very easily. And if for some reason you don't know how to route things, let's say I want to sidechain my bass, which is a very common thing to do. So I highlight the bass, and then I go down here, hover over this little icon here, and then I can right click this and I can go to route to this track only. And now what it's gonna do is it's gonna, instead of routing the bass directly to the master channel, I'm now routing it through the sidechain, and then the sidechain is routing back into the master channel. So if I want to get rid of that, I can go back to my bass and I can just right click on the master channel and go to route to this track only, and then I've taken it off, and now it's routed back to the master channel, which is what it was doing by default. Now personally, I've decided I don't want to do any routing within this template, just because it's not hard to do. It takes 2 seconds, and I don't know with 100% certainty that I'm going to want everything routed through the sidechain that I normally would sidechain. So to me, it just makes things a little bit easier to not have things routed yet, but to have everything set up in a way where I can route things very easily. So let's go over here. The other thing that I want to set up is a drum bus. So I'm going to go to 51 here, and we'll right click, rename color, drum bus. And I want to find a nice color here. We'll do something like this olive color. And again, I'm going to right click this, and I'm going to go to dock to and dock it to the right. So now we have our sidechain and we have our drum bus there. And in this case, I actually am going to route all of my drum samples to the drum bus, because even if I don't do any processing on the drum bus, I still have the ability to do that very quickly and easily. So in this case, I'm going to route the kick to this. I'm going to route the snare to this track only. I'm going to route this to this track only, hi-hat to this track only, other hi-hat to this track only, crash to this hat only, percussion to this track only. I don't think I want these effect slots routed through it, but just so you know, the reason why I have so many effect slots is because these are all reserved for, you know, I like adding a lot of random textural stuff in the background of tracks, and obviously depending on the genre that you're producing, this is going to vary. But for example, white noise, sweeps, risers, we also have, you know, various Foley that you might want to add, stuff like that. So, and even percussion, you know, this can all fall into the category of effects. So, but we do have a couple percussion categories here as well. So now we have all of these drums routed through the drum bus, and then the drum bus is once again routed to the master. I am going to go ahead and add a couple things on this drum bus. Really, I think the main thing I want is just some sort of compression. So I'm going to add the fruity limiter. I'm going to go into the compressor, and we're going to go ahead and set the threshold here. I'm just going to set it to about -20 dBs. And then we'll go ahead and just set a ratio of 2:1, which is a very small amount of compression. And obviously these settings you're going to have to adjust depending on how loud you produce. I tend to produce pretty quietly, so I'm going to go ahead and set these, and then I'm going to mute this. So I have the ability to turn this on, and then I can obviously tweak these settings, but at least I have something kind of set for myself when I'm moving forward. If I want to run all the drums through a compressor, I have the ability to do that. And so by the way, adding this send and this bus, and I'm going to add a couple more in a second, but adding these to my template is something I haven't done in the past, but it's something that I've been thinking a lot about because I think it's going to ultimately save me a ton of time. So again, I'm trying to give you some little tips that you can be thinking about that you may want to add to your own custom templates as well. Now, the next thing that I want to do here is decide if I want any processing going on any of these individual mixer slots. And this is something that I'm actually a little bit unsure of at the moment. I'm leaning more towards not doing any processing because I do process things differently depending on the genre. And the way I'm building this template now is really more of a broad sort of, it's not genre specific. Like I want this to be available for any genre that I'm producing. So right now I'm leaning towards not doing any processing. But again, this is something that you need to decide. Is this going to save you time to maybe add some processing on certain elements? Okay, so I've added a couple more sends. I now have the sidechain, the delay, and the reverb, and then I have these buses. So 3 sends, 3 buses. I don't want to add any more than that. I feel like it's already starting to become a little bit overkill at this point. Now, keep in mind, the beauty of creating your own custom templates is that it's sort of an ongoing thing that you can keep tweaking and you can keep sort of adding on to it and making it better and better as you go. But what I want to do now is go into my delay, and we need to go ahead and add a delay here. I prefer the Fruity Delay 3, so let's add that. And then usually I set the tone to somewhere in here. I'll just leave the level where it is. We'll go to ping pong mode and we'll make this pretty wide, not quite 100%, but like 95%, something like that, 94%. And then I'll leave the time where it is, and I'll go ahead and turn the wet down to about 50%. So this is probably a good starting point. I can of course adjust this later. Let's go ahead and go into our reverb. We're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to add a Fruity Reverb 2. I'm going to go into my presets here and I'm going to do the venue. So this is a really big sounding reverb, and ultimately we can of course tweak this. What I'm going to do is mute this though. I'm going to also add a Valhalla on here. So Valhalla Supermassive, this is a free plugin. I'm just going to pick a preset that I know I like for now. We're going to go to small, we're going to go to space verb. And I like this preset. I think I usually end up tweaking it, and without hearing it, I don't know exactly what I do, but probably turn the mix down to about 40%, and maybe we'll just leave everything else where it is for now. And then again, I'm going to mute this one. And then lastly, I'm going to add the Serum Effects rack, which you guys may or may not have this. Obviously, if you own Serum, you'll have it. And we'll add the reverb from Serum as well. So this will give us a few different options to choose from. I'm just going to leave the default settings now for this. Again, I'm going to mute this, and then I'll just leave this one on for now, the Fruity Reverb as the default. And if you do decide to download this template, you don't have access to these, you can of course delete these if you want, but this gives me a couple different reverb options there to choose from. So a couple things to consider when you're creating your custom templates. One, if you create one specific genre, like lo-fi for example, it's going to make things a lot easier when it comes to adding processing, because you're probably going to use certain lo-fi plugins all the time every time you do a track. So again, you know, the more specific you can gear your templates to your own personal workflow, the better, and the more time you're going to save in the long run. Now, the one thing that we haven't really taken a big look at is the master channel. Now, I always have a Maximus on my master channel, and the settings that I have here are to ultimately give me sort of a mock master so that I can hear things when they're turned up really loud, when they are mastered, what the overall balance of my track is going to sound like. Now, in just a second, I want to go into a little bit more detail about some really important information if you are going to use this template that has to do with Maximus. But first, there's a couple more things that I want to add to this master channel. So number one, I want another metering plugin. So I have the tonal balance control now, which is a really nice plugin. You know, it's an isotope plugin. If you have it, great. If not, not a big deal. You can just delete it off the template. The other two metering plugins that I have here are both free. So Span is a spectrum analyzer, and Ulean loudness meter is a LUFS meter, which measures loudness units full scale. So this is more of a mastering plugin anyway. And then the Span is more of sort of a mixing plugin. It allows me to see the overall balance of a track. And then that's also what tonal balance control does as well, although it gives you a little bit more information in terms of where the range of your track should sit with low, mid, and highs. And then what this algorithm actually does is it has some different genres you can choose from. And it's taken thousands of songs, or not sure exactly how many, but let's just say it's taken thousands of different songs within each one of these genres, analyzed them, and then it's given you sort of a curve of what that usually looks like from a tonal balance standpoint. So it has a broad mode and then it has a fine mode as well. And you can kind of gauge how your track matches up balance-wise, tonal balance-wise, according to essentially tons and tons of reference tracks all at the same time. So this is a really cool metering plugin, and I definitely recommend it if you have the funds. A lot of times on Plugin Boutique, iZotope will be having various bundle deals, and that's how I ended up with this particular plugin. Was I bought it in a giant bundle. So anyway, there's a couple other things I want to add here. In slot 1, I want to go ahead and add a Fruity Balance. This is just a gain plugin, and this is going to ultimately allow me to turn things up or down depending on where my mix sits. And then in slot 4, I want to go ahead and add a patcher preset. So we'll go add patcher, and we're going to go to our presets, and let's find where it says mid-side EQ. Let's turn this one on. And what I want to do here is actually have the side mode where the sides cut out all the low end. There's a couple different ways we can do this. One, we can just do like a low shelf like this. And with the low shelf, you're not going to run into as many issues with phase and stuff like that. If you want to go really extreme with this and you want to actually cut out, you know, a pretty steep filter like this, then you're probably going to want to put on linear phase mode on both of these in order to make sure that it retains the phase really well with this. And then probably you'll want to do high quality as well. I'm actually leaning a little bit more towards not doing the full-on super heavy mastering, just having the default and then doing a low shelf. And then we'll just kind of put this at about 80 Hertz for now. Now keep in mind, you are probably going to need to adjust this a little bit. So the way that you can listen to this within your track, if you do decide to download this template, is you can undo, we'll undo the mid, and then we'll have just the sides coming out. And you'll be able to hear what the side signal sounds like, and you'll be able to kind of sweep this up and find sort of the sweet spot where there's enough of the mid-range coming through and the low mids coming through that it doesn't sound weak, but you'll be able to hear the sub-range and sort of the bass frequencies where it's muddying up the mix. And this trick is going to ultimately help you clean up your mixes quite a bit. So we'll go ahead and reattach that. And then we have that. So now our master chain is looking a lot more finished. We really only have a couple things which we could potentially add onto it, and that would potentially be EQ, maybe some more compression. I do have within Maximus multiband compression going on, and I can tweak this as well. And then the last thing that we could add is some sort of exciter or something like that. And then you can obviously move these around if you need to, if you want to like add an exciter in between before the Maximus or whatever. But I feel pretty good about this mastering chain. I think this is a good starting point, and we can potentially add more stuff to it as we go. Now, traditionally when you're working on a mix, what you'll do is you'll bounce it down or export it to a stereo wave file and then send it off for mastering. But as you can see with this template that I've been creating, I'm actually doing all my mastering in the same project that I do my mixing and my production. And the biggest reason why I do this is just because it saves me a lot of time. Again, this video is all about how you can save time. And the reason it saves me so much time is because in the past, when I did it the old-fashioned way, I would have my project, I would bounce it down as a WAV file, and then I would go into a separate project in order to master it. And then if I ran into an issue with the mix, I'd have to go back into the old file in order to fix it, rebounce it down, and then go back into the mastering channel. And it was just such a time waster. And so if you're mastering your own music, it just makes sense to do it all in the same project as long as your computer can handle it. Now, I do want to go back into Maximus and talk a little bit about this because this is something that's very important. If you are going to be using my template, you really need to know what's going on here. So I do have a lot of pre-gain going on in each individual one of these. You can see that's what these are when I'm pushing this up. And then I also have some post-gain, and ultimately what's happening here, technically it's compression, but for the sake of argument, we're just going to call this a limiter. And so what I have is a limiter already on my master channel. So when I'm producing, let's say I drag an instrument over or a drum, and then take a look at the decibel meter here, and you can see and you can hear how sort of overdriven that kick sample is. So you're definitely going to need to turn stuff down quite a bit here. Now it's less overdriven, but it's still peaking super high. If I take the Maximus off, okay, so now we're peaking at about -12 dBs. So I just want you to be completely aware of this. If you're using this template, you need to know about the Maximus, and you need to potentially be turning it off and just making sure that you're not clipping or going above 0 decibels if you're worried about gain staging and if you're worried about leveling, which you should be. Okay, cool. So let's do a quick recap of everything I've done with this template. So first of all, in our channel rack, we have nothing going on. So no instruments. All the instruments that we add are going either into the channel rack or are going into the playlist. Now with my personal workflow, the way that I do things, I drag most of my instruments directly into the playlist, and then any sort of instruments that I know I'm going to need to do editing within the piano roll, I will put into the channel rack, and then I'll, be able to edit it either in the channel rack or the piano roll that way. And then once I have my MIDI and my samples and everything in the channel rack, I can route everything individually in order to line up with the slots in my mixer by using this right here. So now this is routed to the kick. Let's say this was an effects, so I can route it to either 9, 10, 11, or 12. Now we also have some sends and some buses set up in this, so I can send stuff directly to the sidechain if I want to, or to a delay, or to a reverb, and we have the effects already loaded in here. And ultimately, we're probably going to want to tweak these a little bit as we continue to make some actual music with this template, but at least we have a good starting place now. Now I also have these buses, and I have all my instruments already routed to the buses. So everything is going through the buses. I can decide whether or not I actually want to use these. Maybe I want to add a filter effect or something on my drum bus or my instrument bus, and I can do that really easily by adding the plugin directly on here. And that's actually not a bad idea. I could go ahead and add a destructor plugin, and I can get rid of everything here except for the filter. And we'll actually put this as a low pass 24. And then now we have the ability to have this destructor on here as well. So I'm going to mute that one as well. All right, so once you're finished creating your custom template, the last thing you need to do is save it. And technically we can just go to File, Save As, and save it as the name of your template and then move it into the proper folder. However, the alternate way of doing that would be to actually find the right folder to save it into to begin with. So this may vary depending on your computer, but you need to find the right path where FL Studio was installed. In my case, I need to go into my program files. I want to go to Image Line, FL Studio 20, Data, and then we're going to go to Templates. And then inside templates, we have some different options here. So we have advanced, we have empty, we have minimal, we have other, we have performance, and we have utility. So in our case, I think I'm just going to go into advanced, and we'll just save it right here in this folder. So let's name this Another Monster Productions Custom Template. And you can obviously name this whatever you want, and then we can click save. Now let's go ahead and exit out of FL Studio, and we want to reload a new case of FL Studio. And this time we should be able to actually go into File, New from Template, and then we have AMP Custom Template. So I have my basic template, which is the template I had before, and this is my new template. So AMP Custom Template, let's click this, and now we have my new custom template loaded up. Now, if I want to make this template my default template every time I load up FL Studio, I just need to go up into Options. Let's go to General Settings. And then down here, it says Default Template. So let's change this to AMP Custom Template. And then now, every time I load up FL Studio, it will load up my new custom template. So let's try this out. We'll not save it. Let's go to FL Studio, load it back up. And now I have my custom template. So overall, I'm feeling pretty good about this template. I'll try and maybe do an update video if I make any major changes to it or anything like that. I don't think that I'll necessarily need to, but if I do, I'll try and keep you guys updated. Like I said, link in the description if you want to download this template for free. Thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, please hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. Don't forget to hit the bell notification. That's going to let you know anytime I release videos in the future. Also, if you're brand new to music production or if you're struggling with anything production related, I do offer one-on-one private lessons, which you can sign up for on my website. I'll be sure to leave a link for that as well in the description of this video, so check that out, and I will see you guys in the next video.